This is the rhythm of change. This is the sound of redemption. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
To finish playing the music. All right, I wanted to finish playing the music, but didn't get a chance to do that. So we'll jump right into the show. Welcome. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, coming to you live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and Facebook. Please hit the share button. Let everybody know that we're on. we're going to get a call later from Diane L. Murray Clements, and we'll be talking about a host of issues. We're also going to get a call from Jason in Union, and there's some things going on there. He's got a group page, a private page, where there are residents who are actively involved in what's going on in that community up there. And the establishment is concerned that 16,000 residents are actively involved in this page and talking about, on a regular basis, I might add, what's happening in that township. And because the establishment does not have control over that page, they have been raising holy hell about it. Anyway, we're going to have Jason on, and he's going to talk about the latest issue, which actually made NJ.com. But before we get going, there are two, well, the biggest thing, I guess, that we can close the chapter on now is the Super Bowl that occurred yesterday. I got to tell you, Mahomes is a special kind of guy. 24 years old, just won his first Super Bowl, MVP, all of the other accolades he's received. And it was very interesting watching people leading up to the Super Bowl, and folks were asking me who I thought was going to win. I didn't really have a dog in the race. My team, the Miami Dolphins, were long out of it, but I do enjoy, watching good sports, right? Good athletes, fair, clean games. But I always say defense wins when it comes to football. It doesn't matter. If you have a strong defense, you have a strong offense, the defense is going to win the majority of the time. And the San Francisco 49ers, for what it was worth, was touted to have an amazing defense, and they showed that for the first 3 quarters of the game. My concern about that game, and I gave some analysis about it, and this is not a sports show at all, but I do know my sports. But I gave my analysis, and I said if they're able to rush those 4 down linemen that they have been so dominant with throughout the entire season and into the postseason, and only rush those 4, they would be able to control Mahomes. They'd be able to control those wide receivers. Mahomes, they were able to keep him contained. With just those 4 down linemen, they were able to use the other 7 players to control the middle of the field and prevent against the deep pass. But things changed, right? And their defense, not the offense, I think the defense just really started lagging. But even beyond that, what occurred is when it became necessary, Kansas City's defense stepped up. So it wasn't so much Kansas City's offense. Their defense gave their offense opportunities. Their defense kept their offense in the game. It was 20-10 game, but Kansas City's defense would not let up. They were unrelenting. So they kept the score within 10 points, right? 2 scores away. Allowed the offense to make some plays, but then again, the balance shifted when Kansas City's defense stepped up at the very, very end of the game, shut down the San Francisco 49ers. So I want to congratulate Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and all of those who are true Chief fans, not just those who are postseason fans of teams that make it to the playoffs. I have great respect for folks who ride hard with their team, win or lose. So anyway, that's the news on that. Oh, no, that is not the news. The biggest news, I think, in the Super Bowl, however, were the 2 Latinas who performed at halftime, J-Lo and Shakira. I thought that was fantastic. To me, that Super Bowl halftime was reminiscent of the energy when Michael Jackson performed, and remember Pepsi. I mean, that was the year's Hair Caught on Fire, right? But it was reminiscent of that kind of energy. It wasn't stale. It was I don't know. It was electric, and I sat there and I watched it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that both of those women, what they say, Shakira's 43 and J-Lo's 50. I think they represented themselves very well. They represented their communities well. So I think that it was, all in all, a good event. On to today's news. There is the Iowa caucus, and I don't know that many people really have to say too much more now about the political process here in this country. And folks have been trying to convince people that it's just a Democrat. I mean, just the Republicans. It's just the Republicans. You got to get rid of Trump. You got to get rid of Trump. We heard that, and here on the show, we talked about it. We talked about it during the U.S. senatorial races where they were saying get rid of Trump. We talked about it here in New Jersey during the gubernatorial race where Murphy turned the attention away from him and said we got to get rid of Trump. And on this show, we continue to let you know that it is not Trump, but it is a system. And that system will continue to spit out corruption as long as we allow it to breathe. And so we have to tear that system down. And both sides, not just the Republican side, but the Democrat side too, they allow malfeasance, misfeasance, corruption, collusion to occur as well. So we see now in its full glory what the Democratic Party does. If we didn't, for those of you who didn't want to believe it in 2016 when folks in the Bernie Sanders camp were talking about how the Democratic Party lied and covered up and stole, right? That they cheated in order to disenfranchise the Sanders campaign in an attempt to install Hillary Clinton. We see it happening again in 2020, and they just don't care. So much so that they have now changed the rules. They have taken the rules that existed during this entire election and they have changed the rules to benefit them. Now, some people will say, well, it's their party. But I want to ask you this question. Is it, when you say it's their party, who is the they? See, I want to be clear on that. So they use, because I was challenged with that this week, and somebody said, look, Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat, he's an independent. Now he wants to run as a Democrat, he wants to tear down the Democratic Party, he wants to tear their party down. He should run as an independent. I didn't want to go into the weeds about how Bernie Sanders caucuses with the Democrats, how Bernie Sanders 90-some% of the time votes with the Democrats, how the Democrats lean on Bernie Sanders to help get legislation passed when they need his vote, right? So we're not going to get into all of that. But suffice it to say that Bernie Sanders has said he's running as a Democrat. And essentially saying, I want to run under the rules. Whatever the governing rules are of the party, I want to abide by those rules. So now you start the game or you start the election cycle and you say, okay, we're going to lay down clearly what these rules are. Bernie Sanders says, I agree to those rules. I think I can beat you running in those rules. Hey, Diane, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. So I moved on to the political stuff, but I'm willing to put it in reverse and go back.
We could go with whatever direction you want to go in. I'm good.
No, I'm saying I want to, if you wanted to go back and talk about J-Lo and Shakira, I mean, that's where I can get off before. No,
I didn't watch the Super Bowl, nor did I watch the halftime.
Why?
Because I'm not interested in that stuff, and I have more important things in my life to do than watch them throw around pigskin. So I'm good.
Oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. But okay, you know what? You prioritize your fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically I use my time to work on my business and my social media for business and stuff like that. So I didn't and I listened to some or watched some some ratchet TV. So I did watch some Love It.
Well, but wait a minute.
that is more entertaining to me that Love and Hip Hop New York. That what's her name? Amina and whatever his name's whatever the guy's name is, got married, and I wanted to see the wedding. So that's why I was more interested in seeing her wedding dress and all of that stuff. So I didn't watch the football game at all. I don't even know who played yesterday.
Wow. Well, I would have thought, considering the time you spend on the sidelines at the Pop Warner games, that you would have been involved in the football stuff.
Football overload. No, I'm good. And I washed my hair and sat under the dryer and blew out the power in the house and had to go down in the basement to switch the power back on, and blew out the power, turned off the power for the football game while my husband was watching it. And that was just a whole long, what the heck is going on type thing. So no.
He was in the man cave. Wait. So he was in the man cave. He was in his man cave, completely comfortable, zoned into the game, and you went down and you hit the circuit breaker and knocked out the power.
Well, I couldn't figure out which one was to my hairdryer, and he didn't seem concerned, so I had to hit every switch because apparently the electrician didn't mark the panel accurately, and or his handwriting was horrible, so I couldn't read it. So it is what it is.
Okay. So how much of the game did he miss?
Maybe 4 minutes, if that much.
That's not bad.
Exactly. But that was like a dagger to the heart. So.
Well, a lot of men who watch football, and I'm still like this with all sports. We have our idiosyncrasies. We have our superstitions, right? Like I remember when I was younger and I used to watch. I've always been a Miami Dolphin fan. When Tony Dorsett left graduated Pitt, was drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, because I was a Tony Dorsett fan, I became a Dallas Cowboy fan. And I used to have a Dallas Cowboy pennant, hanging in my bedroom, along with my Miami Dolphin pennant. And I would have to bring the pennant down to the living room when the team was playing. And I felt that if I didn't bring it down and they lost, it was because I didn't bring the pennant down, right? So, and then like all kinds of idiosyncrasies. Even last night watching the game, I got up because, Amina made an amazing dinner. But after dinner, I made some oatmeal raisin cookies. And so I was in the kitchen as the Chiefs were mounting their comeback, right? And so the Chiefs had been down the entire time I was sitting on the couch watching the game. Now when I go into the kitchen, they're mounting their comeback. So now I'm thinking, damn, I need to stay in the kitchen, because if I go back and sit on the couch, do you understand what I'm saying? So literally, Diane, I'm listening to the game from the kitchen, and I was torn. I said, if I go back in there, he's going to throw an interception, or they're going to fumble the ball, and it's going to be my fault because I went back and sat on the couch, and damn it, I knew that I should have been in the kitchen. That's how men are. And so I bet you, if you ask your husband, he believes that him being dialed into the game in crucial moments sends energy to the team that he wants to win. Now, who was he rooting for? Do you know?
No. I told you I wasn't interested. I asked nothing about football. I told you I was watching Ratchet TV yesterday.
Yeah, I get that, but like you don't hear him in sidebar conversation speak kindly about one team and speak negatively about another team. Oh, okay.
No, because he's a Giants fan. So if his people don't win, he's not really rooting for anybody else.
Well,
unless it's against the Cowboys.
Right. So
you
if
know what I'm
he's a
saying?
Giant fan, so the Giants are in the NFC, right? And the Chiefs are in the AFC. So I would go out on a limb and say if he's a Giant fan, then he's probably rooting for
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, whether he sticks with the NFC as a Giants fan or whether he says, you know what, because a lot of NFC, a lot of fans who are, fans of teams that are, in a particular division, they stay with that division all the way throughout. So I'm gonna go
Oh,
with the fact.
that's how it works.
Yeah, well, so yeah, they're NFC, right? So I'm gonna say that he's probably with the average, which then means that he was rooting for that he was rooting against the Kansas City Chiefs. He was rooting for the San Francisco 49ers.
I guess I don't know, but when
So
I
now,
hit the
if that's the
power,
case, though,
it was
Diane-
like
Diane.
DEFCON war up in there.
Well, I'm gonna let you know if he was rooting for the 49ers, he's gonna blame you because that 4 minutes that he wasn't able to send that energy through. Diane, listen, I'm telling you how it goes. And I don't know if any people are in the thread, but men in particular, they will tell you. Listen, you have some not only fans but athletes who are that superstitious. They wear the same socks. They put them on the same way every time, right? So if you put it on left foot first and then right foot, you don't switch up because if you switch up, you might ruin the mojo, right? So there are all kinds of things that you do. And I remember when I played high school ball, my mother would be upset with me because, I wouldn't want to wash my practice jersey all week long, right? And she would say, Eric, this thing smells. I said, I can't wash it, because this gives me energy throughout the week to practice well. And then, I take that into Saturday to play well. And then I remember one time my mother washed my jersey. It was like Superman having kryptonite wrapped around him, Diane. I felt like I'm not going to play well. It's going to be my mother's fault. I was Diane, I was 17 years old. I was bawling. I was like, I can't believe you washed it. I told you not to wash. Diane, it was that serious.
Oh my God. Yeah, way too much. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it could matter. When my daughter played basketball in middle school, I had to make her fried chicken and baked beans because apparently when I first made it, she scored like 30 points in the game. And after that, the whole team was like, you got to keep making this, like, keep doing it.
See?
So for the whole season, I did it. But, I mean, she did well, but, it is what it is. I didn't think anything of it.
But imagine if you didn't do it. But imagine if you didn't do it. And if you didn't do well, Diane. So that's why you do it. You do it out of fear. You do it out of fear of failure. You say, you know what? Look, if it works, it works. And then no harm, no foul, right? She liked the beans anyway, right? So.
Yeah, she loved it. That was her favorite dish. What can I say? But no, I didn't watch the halftime. I wasn't interested in watching Shakira or J-Lo. I'm not a J-Lo fan at all. Didn't like her when she was on In Living Color.
Really?
Still don't like her. Yeah, still don't like her. So I'm good.
Listen, I remember Shakira hit the scene. Can't remember how many years ago it was at the VMA Awards. And you remember that? And she brought the house down where she was doing that thing with her chest and with her hip. And I was like, yo, how did she do that? And then I remember I was in a room with a bunch of guys and we kept hitting rewind because we were like, yo, is she like triple jointed? Like, what the hell is going on there? But yeah, she's uber sexy. I like the way that she, does her thing. And I think J-Lo looked sharp yesterday. I loved her in Living Color when she was a dancer. And, I like the way that her, her career blew up, after that. I don't have a problem with her. I don't.
Usually men don't. Oh well. So what do you think about John Kerry talking about he's going to run for president because the Democrats don't have it together?
Yo, I like better that he used an expletive in his tweet, right? So he dropped the F-bomb in there. Listen, Diane. When you called in, I was just getting into the Iowa caucuses and what's going on.
Oh,
look,
that's today? No, that's tomorrow, right?
No, they're caucusing today.
Wait. It's
they're
today.
Caucusing today. Yeah.
I thought it was on a Tuesday. Okay.
Right,
okay.
So part of the issue that I see right now is the Democratic Party is in complete disarray, and I think it should be. Right, you have a war. But Diane, listen, didn't we talk about this a year ago on the show? sitting
Yeah.
at Kevin's table. We said that there was going to be a civil war. We said that. We said it's going to be a civil war. We said, look, at the end of the day, all of these numbers that they're floating out about how good people are living, how great America could be or used to be, or we said that's not the sentiment. People are not feeling that. America was never great for a lot of people. The economy, those numbers are not real. People are working 2.5 jobs. People are struggling. We talked about all of this. And so now all of the chickens are coming home to roost because the Democratic Party tried to blame Trump for everything. Right? And we kept saying, look, this guy, at that point, he had only been in office for 1.5 years. We said, well, how are you going to lay all of this on his doorstep? Even now that he's been in office for 3 years, you still can't lay it on his doorstep alone. You have to say both parties contributed to the current political climate that exists. And the Democrats refused to take ownership over any of it. Right? They refused to acknowledge what they did in 2016. Their contempt for the voter won't allow them to admit it and to repent and to be more dialed into what the actual voter wants. And so that again feeds into this culture. And so now what they looked at is they said, look, we tried to serve up, we thought that we could muddy and dirty up Donald Trump enough to distract Democrats from believing that we had anything to do with this. And now we'll get everybody, because they ran it across every state. See, they did a test model. And we saw it here in New Jersey, right? We saw it when Senator Booker and Menendez ran. When Senator Menendez ran, what did they say? Stop Trump. That was the anthem, right? Stop Trump. You saw posters everywhere. And Menendez was elected. So they said, okay, that worked. That messaging worked. When Governor Murphy ran, what did you see? It said, what? Stop Trump, right? So that message worked. So they were polling that message back then to see whether the Stop Trump message was going to work. See, this is how insidious the Democratic Party is. And then, because they said, you know what, we don't have any new ideas. We're not going to work to resolve the issues that are truly impacting Americans. What we're going to do is we're going to continue to sell garbage as hope. And in order to do that, we have to have a message of distraction and deflection. And that message of distraction and deflection was Stop Trump. And they said, we're gonna try it in the down ballot or the midterm races, and we're gonna see how it works. And if it works well, then we're gonna run it in the 2020 general. I mean, and that's what we're gonna do.
That's interesting that you said that, because unless you're in the marketing side like you or inside politics, you really don't pay attention to how they really test messages out there to see if they work. Because they did the same thing with Obama. They tested several different messages across the country in different areas to see which one people were going to grab hold to.
And so now let me finish this. Guys, hit the share button, because see, there's some value to being an insider, right? So here was the strategy for the Democrats. So it was to test that message to see if it worked, because again, they have no interest in ever trying to solve the problem. They are the party. The Democrats are the party of poverty management, right? That's the business that they're in. Poverty management. They do the business of corporate America, right? Wall Street, pharma, fracking companies, oil. They do that business. And as far as you're concerned, they're just there to manage your poverty. So they said, well, we're gonna run a campaign of deflect and distract, blame somebody else. We're the saviors. We're gonna take care of you. They tried it throughout all of the states. They believed that it worked. Then the other piece was, in terms of the impeachment, it was to dirty Donald Trump up. And I'm not saying that he's not dirty. That's not what I'm getting at. But their job was not to figure out how to solve problems for you. It was, and you saw it, they invested heavily. People like Rachel Maddow, people like Lawrence O'Donnell, Chris Matthews, all on MSNBC. They invested heavily. Saturday Night Live, right? All of Stephen Colbert, all of them invested heavily in dirtying up Donald Trump. That was the entire thing. It was make it all Trump's fault. Everything is Trump's fault. Nothing has to do, none of your issues have to do with the Democrats. That was their entire investment. Then they said, you know what? The coup de grace is going to be the impeachment. Not that they ever thought they were going to remove him. I want to be clear with you. They never thought they were going to remove him. It was to continue to demonize the Republican Party and to demonize Donald Trump. They wanted to lay this whole thing out so that you could see how corrupt the Republicans are, right? So now as the Democrats did what they did in the House in bringing forward the impeachment, they knew McConnell and the rest of the Republicans were not going to convict Donald Trump in the Senate, but they wanted another narrative that says, see, it's their fault. All of your issues, the crumbling of our republic and the Democrat and our democracy has everything to do with the Republicans, right? And they wanted to muddy them up more. And they wanted to muddy up folks in these down ballot races. They wanted to put senators between a rock and a hard place, congressmen and women on the Republican side between a rock and a hard place, right? To be able to come out in this election cycle and then again in the midterms and say, see, they voted for Donald Trump. They voted for Donald Trump. They voted to acquit him. See, again, no new ideas. They're going to come out in the midterms and they're going to come out in the primary and talk about how these people voted for Donald Trump and Donald Trump is the issue. So again, they won't be talking about your problems, what the greatest existential threat is to the foundational Black American. They won't be talking about how we should seize economic and political power. They'll be talking about Donald Trump. Not how they themselves are subjugating us and denying us opportunities to have economic and political power. I mean, I want you to understand, this is the Democratic Party doing this. And again, I'm not saying the Republican Party doesn't bear equal responsibility. But the Democrat Party to try to walk out of that room and say they have no blood on their hands is absolutely absurd, Diane. And this is why there's an uprising in the servants' quarters, because people know. And they can't help themselves. Their contempt is such that they just can't help themselves. And so what happened? They get to this point. They still never intended to have a plan or to talk about the true pain of the 99%. And they realize now that everything they did has failed. All of the lies about the polling, all of the lies about everything has failed because the caucus is upon us now. And so what did they do? In Iowa, a poll that they always show before the caucus. What happened? They didn't show that poll. And why didn't they show the poll? Because the poll would have shown that Bernie Sanders was in the lead. And so they made up some reason why they weren't going to show this poll. A poll that they always show. And then not only did so I want you to understand, what they want you to believe is that all of these things were not planned out, but were individual things that were happenstance. So they didn't show the poll. Bloomberg, who contributed over $300 million to the Democratic Party, a few days later, not only is he in the race, but the DNC changes the rules of the campaign, right? And they don't want you to believe that his $300 million contributed to the Democratic Party had anything to do with that. And the rules that they changed, and it's very interesting because remember, Julio Castro and Cory Booker came to the DNC and said, look, we think that you need to change these rules. The rules are keeping people of color from being able to be on the debate stage. And what the DNC said was, no, we think that these rules are fine because you have to have engagement, right? Part of it was you had to register at a certain level in 3 credible polls, right? And then beyond that, you had to have a certain number of individual contributions to your campaign. And they said those two things are a litmus test that says that you're doing work, right? You're building a constituency. Got it. That makes sense to me. And so they said these are the rules at the beginning, and so we're going to keep these rules. Now, Bloomberg gets in the race, and Bloomberg doesn't have those individual donations because he came out and said he wasn't taking any money. But now, because they understand that they understand that him being on the stage is important, they're now waiving that one rule about having to. Is that you in the background, Diane? What are you doing?
I'm not doing anything. I'll mute it though. But go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So they suspended that rule that requires you to get individual donations at a certain level in order to get Bloomberg on the stage. And so that rule change was only for him because they realized again that everything they've done has failed, that all of their polling, all the things inside those tabs suggest strongly that Biden is a failed candidate and they need to find a replacement. And so they're setting the stage for that. Now, here's supposed to be a party. So back to whose party is it? If it's a party of the people, then we should be looking at what the people are saying they want. And then our party should be moving in the direction of what the majority of the people are saying that they want. But the party is here, and the majority of the people are over here, and then the party, the Democratic Party, is pushing back against the people, and they're setting everything up to suppress the vote. Now, you tell me how their hands are clean in any of this. You tell me that a party that behaves like that, why you wouldn't say that they are as much to blame for the emergence of a creature like Donald Trump as the Republican Party is. But that's what's going on.
Absolutely, but how do you convince or educate people to vote according to their issues and stop paying attention to stopping Trump? Because if you're a Democrat, you're going to vote, the majority of Democrats are still going to vote the Democratic line. Very few of them are going to push back after the primaries. They're going to vote for whoever the choice is. But before the primaries, how do you encourage people to vote their issues?
Right.
Because there are still people on